Good to go.
Thank you, Connor. Good morning. This is convening of the Massachusetts Gaming Commission. Meeting number 546. It's approximately 9:33 a.m. on February 6, 2025. We're holding this meeting virtually, so we will do a roll call. Good morning, Commissioner O'Brien.
Good morning, I'm here.
Good morning, Commissioner Hill.
Good morning, I'm here.
Good morning, Commissioner Skinner.
Good morning.
And good morning, Commissioner Broder.
Good morning.
I'm Jordan Maynard. I'm serving as chair. With that, let's go ahead and get over to Secretary Skinner. We have a lot of meeting minutes, Secretary Skinner.
We do, and it looks like I have to take these in two separate motions. And so, Mr. Chairman, I move that the commission approve the minutes from the June 20th, 2023, the August 30th, 2023, and the June 17th, 2024 meetings that are included in our packet, subject to any necessary corrections for typographical errors or other non-material matters. Second.
Any discussion? All right. Commissioner O'Brien.
Aye.
Commissioner Hill.
Aye.
Commissioner Skinner.
Aye.
Commissioner Broder.
Abstain.
And I vote yes, 4 and 1 abstention.
Okay, and I further move that the commission approve the minutes from the November 21st, 2024, the December 5th, 2024, and the January 9th, 2025 meetings that are included in our packet, subject to any necessary corrections for typographical errors or other non-material matters.
So before I move for second, I have an edit I wanted to put out on January 9th, 2025, page 50 in our packet. It's the procedural moving and amending. I think it needs to be clarified that Commissioner Broder put a motion out. I made a friendly was rejected, and then the vote. As written now, it kind of implies we had a conversation about whether it would happen, and then it went straight into motion second vote. So I'm just asking that a little more detail go in about the procedural posture on that vote.
Okay, would you, and I see Jenna. Yes, hi Jenna. So
hi, good morning.
Would you, Commissioner O'Brien, prefer that we tweak this now or take these off the table for today?
I don't think you need to take them off for today. It's a discussion. So what it is that paragraph right before the actual vote, where it says discussion occurred as to whether it could be amended based on how, Commissioner Hill suggested Commissioner Broder could either withdraw the motion or accept a friendly. Taking the language I suggested, that's a little softer than what happened. Like what happened was he said that, I then made a friendly, Commissioner Broder declined, and then we went into the vote. So that's the part that's missing.
Okay. So do you have proposed language?
It would basically be after that, rather than the Commissioner Broder noted he was comfortable, there's a sentence missing that says Commissioner O'Brien offered a friendly amendment to that effect, and Commissioner Broder declined.
Okay, so we'll add that sentence.
I will take care of that. Yep.
Perfect.
Yeah. And with that edit, I would second your motion on the minute.
I accept your friendly amendment. I don't think it's an amendment, but the edit.
No, the edit.
And I don't think I need to accept the edit, right? I think we as a commission accept the edits. So I'm good.
If we so vote. Commissioners, any other discussion? Just to wrap it up. I'm good with clarifying that whole sequence. We can go back and watch it. All right. Commissioner O'Brien.
Aye.
Commissioner Hill.
Aye.
Commissioner Skinner.
Aye.
Commissioner Broder.
Yes.
And I vote yes, 5-0. Thank you so much, Secretary Skinner, and to the team, Judy, and those who, Autumn, and all those who do the minutes.
I join in your thanks.
All right. We are now turning to Executive Director Dean Serpa. Good morning, Dean. I think you have a couple of issues for us this morning.
That's right. Thank you, Chair Maynard. Hello, good morning, Commissioners. First, we'll talk a little bit about our partnership with DPH, right? I wanted to check in with the Commission today on some of the projects underway involving some level of collaboration between the Commission and our partners at the Department of Public Health. And I guess specifically the Commonwealth's Office of Problem Gambling Services. So following this update and depending on any feedback we receive today, my hope is that the staff at the MGC, including myself and Research and Responsible Gaming Director Vanderlinden, can move forward and place an emphasis on those topics considered most compelling to the Commission. As background, as you know, the MGC has a memorandum of understanding executed between the Commission and the Executive Office of Health and Human Services, and we've had that since July of 2014. It was most recently renewed in August of 2021. And you know, the main tenet of that MOU, aside from defining the apportionment of the funds from the Public Health Trust Fund, that it calls for the two agencies to collaborate on certain initiatives of mutual interest in order to advance the Commonwealth's best interest in the area of problem gambling. So I'll also remind everyone that we've had a few meetings on this, on these topics, at least since I've been here as Executive Director. That included a meeting with DPH Executive Director Goldstein back in June 5th of 2024 and his staff. A meeting, I think, on June 7th, 2024 with DPH Assistant Commissioner Diop and her staff. And then last October in a meeting with Office of Problem Gambling Services Director Ortiz. So in each of those meetings, or among all those meetings, the areas of interest discussed for both organizations included some of the following. I'll just detail them quickly here, right? So there was a decision made to conduct a study of existing disclaimer language in sports wagering advertising to make sure the Commonwealth is delivering the most clarity possible in those advertisements and those communications. And at this point, MGC staff and DPH have coordinated with the study's vendor, Market Street Research, and I believe that study is underway. And of course, we'll be interested in reviewing those results when they're available. The second project was working with the Office of Problem Gambling Services to update the problem gambling, Commonwealth's Problem Gambling Helpline website, right? We know the website, to provide clear instructions for enrolling in the voluntary self-exclusion program. This item continues to be an action item for us and still needs to be completed. We're also working with the Office of Problem Gambling Services to provide refresher training to the Mass Problem Gambling Helpline staff on the GameSense VSE program and the enrollment processes there. Recently, this training session was scheduled for March 6th, 2025. So hopefully that will work out well. And we've been involved with the Office of Problem Gambling Services and the district courts to create a framework in which we can deliver required problem gambling assessments to determine whether targeted individuals should be placed on the statewide mandatory exclusion list. There's been, I guess, maybe a little less progress made on that, but recently DPH did assign a project manager, and there's been one coordination meeting between their staff and our staff. One other addition is that MGC staff, DPH, and the Mass Council on Gaming and Health are planning a gambling screening day event for March 11th, next month, or I guess the month after. And they're going to coordinate for an on-site clinician to be available at all three of the casino properties to answer questions from patrons on all aspects of the problem gambling resources available in the state. So very briefly, those were some top level updates from the to the commission on these topics. So in the time I've been here, I think I can say from a basic analysis as executive director that the largest challenge to making progress in these areas, not surprisingly, is our ability to keep the momentum moving even when there is consensus reached, right? And I think this is mainly due, like with any cross-agency initiative, it's due to inevitable competition from other core priorities at the agencies and being able to just keep a focus in moving projects from step to step. And second, I would say, you know, from my perspective, my responsibility as executive director, I'll need to keep an emphasis on making sure as a commission, we're communicating clearly to our partners at DPH, our top priorities for collaboration. And then subsequently just remain focused on pushing forward on each step of the plan to make progress. I would say, I think, you know, both agencies share a commitment, right, to mitigating gambling harms here in the Commonwealth. We each have an important role to play, and we need to double down and focus on that. So those are some top level updates. With that being said, I'm not sure if Director Vanderlyn has any more information he wants to add, but regardless, in any case, he and I can answer any questions on those topics or any others, and I'd be looking forward to getting your guidance on these issues.
Thank you, Dean. Anything to add, Director Vanderlyn?
I think that did a good job of framing it. Thank you.
I'll just start out by saying I appreciate the entire commission. I know that we've all had various conversations with DPH and Dean. Just my 2 cents, Dean, and you know this, and I'll say it for public consumption, is that we focus on what we can focus on, understanding that we don't have certain authorities definitely under the court and definitely under DPH, but that we are a willing partner resource for anybody that needs us. To give our expertise that Mark Vanderlyn and his team have, but that we focus on what we can focus on and prioritize what we can do. So that's my only feedback. Commissioners?
Just to add what you said, this has been, you know, a delicate situation in the time that I've been here. I appreciate the transparency. I appreciate the involvement of the ED and Mark and all of us to the extent that OML allows us to continue to work on this. So I thank you for bringing it publicly to the meeting.
I'll just add that what both Chair Maynard and Commissioner O'Brien said was well said, and I echo those sentiments.
Okay.
Anything else?
All right, we will go.
Chair Maynard, may I? I'm sorry. May I just say a few words?
I'm going to start putting a statute of limitations on you because I did call it. But go ahead.
You know, I think both the Gaming Commission and DPH really support and endorse a public health approach to mitigating gambling-related harm. And by saying that, it doesn't mean that what we're doing is redundant of one another. In fact, I would say we each have our own specific lanes in carrying that vision out. And just like it says in the MOU that we will seek out areas of mutual interest and seek to collaborate on those. And I think we should, as you said, double down on that. And where, that isn't possible, and we recognize that this is a shared public health approach to mitigating gambling related harm, we should really seek to support one another and the projects, initiatives that we're doing. And so I think that's the spirit where I think of trying to work together with cross-stage agencies and move this issue forward.
All right, thank you for that, Director Van Linden. With that, can we turn to Dean's second issue?
Sure, yeah, and so just to sum up, we'll remain focused and steadfast and make sure we make progress where we can in that area. But yeah, sure. For the next topic, the materials for this are on page 54 to 63 of your packet. And as you know, and I think as detailed in the memorandum in your packet, the commission is preparing to move forward with a job posting for the position of Division Chief Human Resources Division, right? And while the Division Chief Human Resources Division is a new job title at the MGC, once the position is filled, it would certainly be designated as a major policymaking position for the purposes of filing the Commonwealth SFI, right? And as such, that means it's subject to the MGC hiring policy 10301. And so, per that policy, at the beginning of the hiring process, we are to come before the commission to determine if the commission has a preference on its role in the involvement for the hiring. I did put in your packet a list of all the positions that are subject to hiring policy 10301, but this one certainly would be one of those. In that policy specifically, it states that the level of involvement by the commission could include either the chair's designation of one or two commissioners to participate, or the commission simply receiving notification of and review of the job posting, or the implementation of notification requirements during the hiring process, or just simply delegation of the hiring process to the staff with any conditions set by the commission. So that information is all in your packet. I think you're familiar with it. And if you have any questions, I can answer them, or if you have any feedback on the information in the packet, we can take that now. Whatever your position is.
Thank you, Dean. I saw Paul's mic off first, then Commissioner Skinner's.
Just since you asked, Executive Director, my preference would be to delegate. I'm happy with the job description and I'm comfortable delegating the process to you in your role as ED. I think that is part of your job, so I'd be happy to have you take on that responsibility.
Commissioner Skinner.
So I want to address first off the change in the job title. This is a position title that's going from Chief People and Diversity Officer to Chief Human Resources Officer. And I'm okay with that because it's consistent. The naming convention, if you will, is consistent with the other chief level positions at the agency. But I do want to say for the record that, and for all those who are interested, revising the job title by removing the reference to diversity does in no way reflect any lessening of the commission's expectations that that particular work be carried out. And I believe my fellow commissioners will join me in saying or agreeing that now more than ever, the commitments we've made to be intentional about our DEI work, about our operators' DEI work remains strong despite what is playing out at the federal level and across the country. So again, I'm supportive of the job description. I'm supportive of the change in title because it presumes a narrower focus on the transactional HR responsibilities. I'm also okay with designating the executive director to develop the hiring process on the condition that at least one commissioner serve on the hiring committee. And I would love to serve with whoever the designees will be, should we decide to vest that authority in Dean on that hiring committee. Or participate in whatever process you, Dean, as the executive director, have in mind.
Sure. And I just a bit of feedback on your question. Absolutely, I think that topic. It's a very important question, and I wanted to make sure to communicate, if I didn't in the memo, right? You can see from the job description that's in the packet, the position is still expected to provide a high level of involvement on the issue of diversity and inclusion to the staff and to our organization, and to work with the Commission's Equity Inclusion Work Group. So that's a requirement of the position. But more importantly, so as you all know, we're undertaking a deliberate restructuring of the human resources business unit here, right? And the addition of this position, the title Division Chief Human Resources, I see it just as a first step, right, in that process. Because we all know, I think, that there's going to be multiple steps to get where we want to be. And the commission, right, it has a robust commitment to diversity, and it has a strong diversity program right now. So I would look at the candidate pool for division chief with an eye to strengthen that position with regard to leadership in that area. But if the candidate pool didn't provide that, there would be nothing to prohibit us from making another move in the department to make sure that we end up with the talent that we need. And it's also important to recognize that we have a strong DEI program manager now, and we can only end up in a stronger position as long as we keep an eye and keep focus on that requirement. And I would plan to do that, of course.
Yep, thank you for confirming that.
Thank you, Commissioner Skinner. Commissioner O'Brien?
Yeah, thank you to Commissioner Skinner for saying what you said about DEI. I think we all agree with you. I also agree with you in terms of the one commissioner participation. This is the level that historically we have a commissioner participating. Commissioner Skinner's expressed her interest. I think that's an excellent choice from where I sit. My only suggested edit, and I'm pretty strong about this suggestion, and I don't know if I'm looking at an outdated version or not, because I know I flagged this, was page 62, when you go to the education and experience, currently said 15 years of HR management experience. I mean, Chair, you recall you and I were involved in the ED search. We only had, that kisses up to a really high level. And I fear we're going to potentially lose out if we do 15. That seems excessive. So I open it up for conversation, whether it should be 7 to 10, 8 to 10, something lower than the 15, I think would be appropriate, but I open that up for discussion.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Hill?
I would be more than happy to lower it from 15 to 10 years, and even lower, actually. But 10 years, certainly, I think that's an average amount of years when we're looking at a position like this. So I would be okay with that change.
Commissioner Skinner?
I'm happy with adjusting it from the 15. I would suggest more of a range rather than stay hard and fast on a minimum number of years. I think the 7 to 10 that Commissioner O'Brien referenced makes sense.
All right. Commissioner Broder said he was okay with that. I'm okay with that too. Commissioner O'Brien, I think it's a good suggestion. And of course, if someone that comes with 15 years experience through the door, great, right? But we'll give you a little more flexibility there. ED Serpa is the direction from the commission.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I was probably overly eager to get a very seasoned candidate, and hopefully we still will, but we'll use that range 7 to 10.
All right, and then I also agree, because I'm looking at the memo. Looks like the policy is the change. So Commissioner Skinner of course, makes sense for you to join this. I would also say I would like to join it too with you. So I know we said one commissioner, but I'm reading the memo here. So I would join it with you, Commissioner Skinner, if you don't mind.
I believe I said at least one, but my apologies if I didn't.
No. I'll join you. All right. Do you have what you need, Dean? And are we good, commissioners?
I have what I needed.
All right. Well, thank you, Dean. I know this is important work, and I know that every good organization has to have a solid foundation with the AHR department. So thank you for undertaking this work. With that, we are going to turn it to Commissioner Hill. You have a couple of items, Commissioner Hill. You have a legislative update as well as a discussion of some prop wagers. I'll let you take it over.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the first one is the legislative update, and I really don't have one for you today. The last week's or the last meeting's update, I think, is still fresh in your minds and hasn't changed much. But what I would like to ask of my fellow commissioners is, do you mind if we direct staff to send another letter now to the House leaders who are putting the budget together, similar to the letter that we had sent to A&F a few months ago? It looked at, and I'm just bringing it up, so bear with me one second. It looked at 4 issues that we care about in the budget, which of course restore funding for the Community Mitigation Fund. We give an explanation of why this program is so expensive, is so needed in the communities that it serves, and maintain the current revenue stream for the Racehorse Development Fund. And we would be requesting to allow us to utilize up to 10% of the fund for regulating racing industry. The third is maintaining funding for the Public Health Trust Fund, which we just touched upon. And then we have had a request in before the legislature a few times to amend Chapter 23N, which is a sports wagering legislation, and includes language that would allow the commission to effectively regulate the industry by allowing operators to submit commercially sensitive confidential information and documentation without it being open to the general public. So it's basically the same verbiage that we would be sending to the House leaders and eventually Senate leaders, but I didn't want to make that request to staff without getting an okay from the full commission.
So commissioners, do we want to copy and paste that letter to A&F to the House and the Senate? Is I think the question. Commissioner O'Brien.
I'm in support of that.
Okay. I want to point out that I educated myself a little more about that 10%, Commissioner Hill, and there could be some pushback on it taking some money away from the purses to put it into the MGC's funding, but I would defer to the legislature and however they want to deal with that. And my understanding is too, it could come from 2 different types of racing, and there's a lot of things there that I've thought more about, but I'll leave that up to the legislature. We can educate them on how it would work. That's my thinking. Commissioner Skinner?
Yeah, I want to add my agreement to sending the letter to the House.
Commissioner Broder, what are you thinking? All right, getting a thumbs up. All right, Commissioner Hill.
Thank you for that, and I will work with Dean and staff to get that letter out to the House leaders. The second issue has to do with the coin toss betting at the Super Bowl. Many of you know that I referee basketball on the weekends, and usually when you're running up and down the court, you're getting yelled at because you made a bad call. Well, a couple of weeks ago, I was running up and down the court, and someone yelled from the stands, "Are we going to be able to bet on the coin flip at the Super Bowl?" So I stopped immediately, looked right at him, and he was as serious could be. I couldn't believe that I would be in my referee clothes and they would recognize me as a commissioner. And then only a few days later, I went to a local watering hole down in Ipswich, and I wasn't even in there 5 minutes, and another patron came and asked the very same question, if they would be able to bet on the coin toss. So I had asked, and I thank everybody for allowing this to be brought before us today for consideration and debate. This has to do, it's called Super Bowl prop wagers. This was an issue that we actually took up a year ago, and on a 3-2 vote, it was decided that we would not allow these Super Bowl prop wagers. I think after witnessing last year's coin toss, and to my knowledge, and please correct me if I'm wrong, there was no problem with betting integrity that took place. I looked in, all the jurisdictions, and I Googled as many news articles as I could to see if any betting integrity had, been took place. So with that said, Mr. Chairman, before you, I was hoping that we would be able to debate and take a look at offering the coin toss results, the coin toss winner, the coin toss winner wins game, and the coin toss call result. That is what we had, I believe, what we had voted on last year. Again, to remind the public, there were other prop bets like the Gatorade color over the coach, the national anthem length. And we, of course, decided we didn't want to go that far. But I think the coin toss is something we should be revisiting. And again, thank everybody for allowing it to come forward today. And I hope that maybe after a year of looking at it, that we feel more comfortable allowing it in this year's Super Bowl.
I have to admit, Commissioner Hill, when you brought this to my attention to add it to the agenda, I immediately went, ugh. But only because I know it's going to be, people get spirited about it. Commissioner O'Brien.
So I have comments, but I have a clarifying question first, which is, I'm assuming, if my understanding of this is correct, and I direct this, I think, primarily to Carrie, that we're not saying that these are already existing prop bets, that what you're asking us to consider, Commissioner Hill, is calling this an other event that we would then add into the catalog. Is that correct?
That's right. You decided last year that these weren't prop bets already authorized in a sporting event, and that's why they weren't authorized. So if you were to add them, they would be under that sort of other event category.
Okay, great. So I think I was one of the nays last year. I'm still a nay this year. I respect Commissioner Hill's desire. I've been approached on different things out and about as well. And I laud you for bringing it forward so we can have the conversation. I did ask Carrie several weeks ago, knowing this was coming up again, and we were kind of under the wire when the clarification was asked for a year ago, and was told no operator asked and came forward. It's part of the reason I'm still a no. The other part of the reason is we've had a number of non-compliance events where, they're not even sure what's properly in their catalog or not. I'm not exactly for adding more, especially when they haven't asked for it. Nor am I particularly convinced it's, going to drive up revenue, or am I concerned it's going to go into the black market or people crossing the line? When you talk to people in RG circles, most of the people going back into illegal markets are people being limited, not people on a small bet like this. I also don't think someone's going to drive across state lines just for this bet. I just don't think it's there. I understand I may be in the minority, but I would be voting to stay with the 12 states, the third of the jurisdictions that offer sports betting right now, to not allow something like this. So.
Thank you, Commissioner O'Brien. I love a good, here we've got a dichotomy here, right? We can get in this. Commissioner Skinner, Commissioner Broder. What are we thinking?
I would be a yes if there was a motion made, and it comes to the, if it comes to a vote, I would be voting yes. I think it is something that a certain segment of the market is looking for. My sense is that it is very safe. It is, not something that can be gamed. So I'm comfortable moving forward.
All right, Commissioner Skinner.
I think this year, I, along with Commissioner O'Brien, may be in the minority because I'm still a nay. For me, nothing's really changed in terms of the discussions we had a year ago, almost to the day. and now. At the time we took up the matter a year ago, we had one operator, I think, who was maybe interested in offering this market, but declined to submit a petition. A year has passed. We are again on the eve of the Super Bowl taking up this discussion. Yet we still don't have an operator who has come forward to request or petition to authorize this market. So I think we're in the exact same position we were a year ago. As far as this being considered as an other event, I mean, we don't even have the legal analysis to go through whether this would qualify as another event or, what. There's no understanding right now as part of this discussion, what's required in the petition for an other event. So none of that information is before us, coupled with the fact that we don't have an operator who is standing behind this request. And those of you who know me know I'm very much about process. And as I said last year, and I wasn't the only one, I'm not going to side-skirt the requirements that we place on operators in this way. I take no issue with Commissioner Hill raising the matter. I think that the authority of a commissioner to raise the matter is very different from whether that commissioner should, when we don't have an operator standing behind the commitments to integrity that we would typically see in these discussions. And so I would not be voting for the coin toss, any of these props to be included in the catalog as another event.
Commissioner Broder, I see. Thank you, Commissioner Skinner, for your weighing in. Commissioner Broder.
Super briefly, I just wanted folks to know that I did have an opportunity to watch last year's discussion about the issue and was factoring that into my analysis as well. I appreciate the tip really from Carrie that was out there to send me the link. It was very helpful.
Thank you, Commissioner Broder. I'll point out, Commissioner Skinner, I do remember having a conversation last year about whether it would fit under that category. And my understanding, and Todd and team can reaffirm or deny that I'm right, which is possible. I have a faulty memory sometimes, especially when a year goes by, that it would fit squarely into our authority to allow it, because we were briefed on this last year. I see Justin coming off mic.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just reinforce what Carrie said earlier, that when I think Carrie, when she was in legal last year, actually did the analysis, this would fall into the other event category. And the analysis at that point was that the commission as a whole has the authority to add events to the catalog. That's how we created the catalog in the first instance. That does not mandate that any operator offer the market. It just means that they may offer the market if they choose to do so. So that being the distinction there.
Thank you, Justin. Commissioner Skinner, I see you next up.
So just part of that conversation a year ago, it was acknowledged first by Commissioner Hill. I don't know if we've ever confirmed this officially, that the commission previously decided that commissioners cannot independently sua sponte bring a request for events to be added to the catalog. So how do we square that away when this commission has already decided? And I guess maybe it can be dealt with in the motion, right? Because we can make a different determination today, I suppose, than we did then. But I just want to make sure that, you know, we understand what we're doing, because again, today as of today, we have determined previously that commissioners may not sua sponte bring events forward for consideration in the catalog, and that was acknowledged. And Commissioner Hill, I think you recall, brought forward requests that were denied for that reason, right? Because the commissioner made a decision. So I just want to understand. And listen, I want to say yes, but I just, process wise, I can't get there. So that's neither here nor there at this point, because I understand we may have consensus. But I need someone legal. Justin, I see you're off mic.
Yeah, sure. I can.
Help me understand what we're doing today and how that affects the decision we made before.
The decision that was made before, my recollection of that, and Carrie, if you recall this better, feel free to interject. But was that the decision was put to a vote, and the decision was made not to add those for various grounds. I don't believe that was based on a limitation in the overall authority of the commission. And legal has been looking at this recently under existing regs and the statute as a whole to see if the commission has the authority to bring events into the catalog that it chooses to do so. And the conclusion that we reached was that the commission is authorized as a body to add events to the catalog. I mean, if that's how we created the catalog. So we have that authority because we started it at the advent of sports wagering. There was no catalog. We created the catalog. We added every event to the catalog into the first instance. So we have the inherent authority to modify the catalog inherent in 23N. That's part of our overall authority. We've never really sort of focused in on the issue of one particular commissioner saying, can we add? And we've been looking at that issue, but that authority does lie with the commission if you choose to exercise it. The parameters.
1 second, just yep. 1 second. Notwithstanding the authority is there, should we choose to exercise it, this commission, as I understand it, explicitly said commissioners may not exercise that. And that was at the time, that was something that Commissioner Hill, and maybe Commissioner Hill can help, plug in the details here, but Commissioner Hill identified that as a concern at the time. The former chair did not remember that conversation. I don't think I remembered the conversation. I still don't remember the conversation, but just in terms of, Commissioner Broder, you speaking about having reviewed the material, I also reviewed the material to refresh my recollection of this discussion. And that is one of the things that stood out to me is that, again, I get that those motions didn't carry, or the motion carried, but we voted 3-2 against. But for me, it's still the missing piece is whether we as a commission determined prior to those meetings that commissioners will not bring or shall not bring these events forward.
My recollection of that, Commissioner Skinner, was that was a question, and that's why legal was looking at it, because I think Commissioner Hill had raised that question previous to the discussion last year about the Super Bowl, was whether, I forget the specific example he had raised, but I believe he had raised the question of whether a commissioner could bring up something that they wanted to add to the catalog. And that led to legal looking into it, which we had been doing relatively recently.
Okay.
And so then when we looked at it, we said, it hasn't been done. So a specific process hasn't been outlined in our regs, for example, for a commissioner on their own bringing this up. So there's no outlined process. However, the overall authority for modifying the catalog rests with the commission as a whole. So you have the authority to do so, and it doesn't have to be set forth in the reg. It could be, and we could clarify it via reg, and that's something we're examining. But the authority to do so and the fundamental power to alter the catalog is inherent to the commission's powers under 23N, because you and we set the catalog. We say what we're okay with wagering on, what we're okay with markets being taken up by our operators, and we can modify that as we see fit for a whole host of reasons set forth in 23N. So process-wise, it's a little murky, but authority-wise, I think that is clear. So I think we're enabled to do this, but certainly we could clarify it if this is going to be an issue that the commission will continue to look at in the future. Commissioners bringing things up, we could iron that out via regulation or some other means to make it a step-by-step process, for example.
So just to clarify, you're saying that legal did look at this in light of the prior discussions recently and has come to the determination that the commission didn't preclude itself from bringing forward these these items to be considered for the catalog, correct?
Yes, the commission has the legal authority to modify the catalog. And
Yes,
so
but was that looked at recently in light of the prior discussions where this became a question? Because ideally, this would have come before the commission to have another discussion about so that we can all be on the same page in terms of what we decided and when.
after Commissioner Hill had raised the issue about whether that's how the whole conversation started in my recollection, was that Commissioner Hill had asked about an individual commissioner bringing something up and adding it to the catalog, and then legal started looking at it. And I believe a couple of weeks ago, we had some separate meetings with all of you to just sort of discuss that in 2x2s. And so we had some initial discussions along those lines where we did find a fundamental authority with the statute in modifying the catalog. So legally, we're sound. My conclusion from a legal standpoint is that we're sound in the commission's authority to add things to the catalog.
So, Justin, Commissioner O'Brien, if I can, Councilor Grossman did go off mic. I want to give him a second to, if he has anything to add, and then I'll turn straight to you.
No, I agree with everything Justin just said. I was just going to add, but I'll just second what he said.
Okay, and Commissioner O'Brien.
Sure. So Commissioner Skinner, to your point, I have the same recollection that the conclusion that we made as a body was we did not at present in the regs have the authority. It's a separate conversation than whether we would believe, as legal has represented, there's sort of the inherent authority to implement that. The biggest conundrum right now is we don't have a reg. So I think Commissioner Skinner commented on sort of the normal facets of information that would go into a petition to add something into the catalog would have, show me the integrity, show me the stability, show me the reliability of the results, all that stuff. Even if commissioners have the authority to do it, right now we're being asked to vote where we're not putting that information in front of us. I think we all went last year and kind of did our own research, like looking at, oh, there's this many and they all calibrate and you don't know and blah, 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 blah. That's not in the record in front of us. So that's another issue that is troubling to me. And again, I specifically went weeks out saying, are we going to hear this again? And it's like, no operators asked for it. So wholly apart from the sort of factual underpinnings of the request, there are procedural challenges to raising it the Thursday before. We've found ourselves in the same situation again. And again, no operator has asked for it. So, and Justin, to respond to, yes, we created the catalog. We created the catalog vastly, if not entirely, based on requests of the operators to put the stuff in the catalog. And so I don't disagree that there could be an inherent statutory authority for a commissioner to make such a request. That's why I did not say to Commissioner Hill I was going to in any way object to him raising it today. Commissioner Skinner does, in fact, raise valid points about last year. And I would reiterate, we do not have the regs in place to actually do this properly. It's another layer for why I think the timing of this is unfortunate. I have my other independent reasons for why substantively I wouldn't go down this road. But Commissioner Skinner's procedural points, I believe, are well taken because we have a lack of a reg and we're not putting the same level of information out that an operator would have to put out to add to the catalog.
Thank you, Commissioner O'Brien. So I'll add in now, if you don't mind. And this probably won't be a surprise to my fellow commissioners. I've always taken the view that a commissioner should be able to add stuff to the catalog. I do remember us adding stuff to the catalog based on other jurisdictions and without the formal forms being filled out. I'm a good government for good government purposes person, but I also don't believe we should be overthink things and be too complex and too complicated. That's been my position, by the way, for 2.5 years. And I remember this. I tend to remember that we did make a decision that the public couldn't add anything, but I was really, really dogged in my belief that any commissioner should not abrogate their authority to add to the catalog when they want to. And so for those reasons, I hear the procedural issues that Commissioner Skinner and Commissioner O'Brien raised. I don't share them, the concerns in this matter. And B, I, like I did last year, would vote to allow the coin toss. And the reason why is the patrons. I think there is a market for it. I think the patrons want it. I would caution, to Commissioner O'Brien's point which I think is totally valid, that if there are operators who don't think they can scramble to get this ironed out before Sunday, they shouldn't do it, right? Like if you cannot offer this the correct way and we have to come back around with IEB and start finding you, it's not worth it. But to add it to the catalog heretofore as an option for patrons, because I do think people are betting on the coin toss, I would vote to allow it. Now, I'm also open, commissioners, to having this larger reg conversation that outlines what we do in vis-a-vis the statute. But I'm already going to tell you where I am on it, even for legal research. I'm never going to take away my own authority to add something to this catalog, ever. So, so with that said, that's kind of where I am. But I respect what all five of us have said here today. Commissioner Skinner?
Just to briefly add, not interested in taking away authority. I just think it needs to be clear how we exercise that authority. The other thing I'm going to do is ask that we get this item on the agenda as soon as practicable, so that we don't find ourselves in this situation again next year on another other item that someone wants to include, a commissioner wants to include in the catalog. Thirdly, our sports wagering team gives us really nice stats in terms of the Super Bowl and wagers, etc. One of the things I'm going to be asking, should this motion pass, is that we also include stats on these prop bets here, if to the extent we can.
So can I ask what kind of stats? Because I was curious about what revenue that Commonwealth's actually going to get out of this. So I would join that and just say that one of the things I'd want to know is what was the actual tax revenue at the end of it on this.
If they even offer it this year, right, Commissioner O'Brien, to your point, they may not even offer it this year.
Yeah, I mean, obviously fold in with how many operators actually offer it.
We do know from last year that Super Bowl was the highest day. We do know that. That said, all right. I think we've really discussed this issue at length.
With that said, Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Hill.
I move that the commission amend the official catalog of events and wagers to include the Super Bowl coin toss results, the Super Bowl coin toss winner, the Super Bowl coin toss winner wins game, and the Super Bowl coin toss call result.
Second.
Thank you. Commissioner O'Brien.
Nay.
Commissioner Hill.
Aye.
Commissioner Skinner.
Nay.
Commissioner Broder.
Yes.
And I vote yes, 3-2. All right. Thank you, Commissioner Hill, and thank you to Justin for the explanation, and Councilor Grossman and Carrie for joining us on that. I will tell you, I gave Carrie a brief scare when I told her that I was going to add this to the agenda. So she looks though like she's like we survived it. All right. With that,
Actually, before you move on, I want to ask one thing of Commissioner Hill. I want to know what you get now when you go out and you ref your basketball games over the next couple of days for feedback.
I certainly hope to hear from that guy and hope he doesn't boo me for bad calls.
and coin toss does not mean, commissioners, that we toss coins at Commissioner Hill. Okay, so let's not do that. All right, or to anyone, any of the parents in the stands when he's reffing. All right, we're going to turn it over to the Division of Racing, and for that, the Director of Racing, Dr. Lightbound, is going to join us.
Good morning. I'm going to quickly turn this over to Chad, and then I believe he's going to turn it over quickly to Steve O'Toole, because we're also joined with the president of Curry Building Systems, Bill Curry, who worked on the project, and he has a pretty hard stop. So we're going to try to get to him pretty quickly. So with that, I'll turn it over to Chad on the capital improvement reimbursement topic.
Thanks, Alex. Good morning, Chair Maynard and Commissioners. So as Alex mentioned, with regards to time, I'm going to go ahead and open it up to Steve O'Toole and Bill Curry, who's a general contractor, to give you an overview of all the work that they completed on the racing paddock. Steve, Bill, good morning.
Thanks, Chad. I'll just introduce Bill Curry. If you have any questions, I know commissioners, you walked through the project when it was just about completed. If you recall, we kind of got hollered at by Bill's foreman for stepping on the hot top that hadn't quite solidified yet. But we're really pleased to have Bill Curry as a longtime contractor that works with Plainridge simply because of his performance and the timelines that he gives you. He's right on. And this particular project was like threading a needle that we had to do in our off season. So we only had a certain amount of time to get the work accomplished. And as Bill always does, he comes through with those performances. And we really appreciate that. So if you have any questions for Bill on the project, I know you saw it. It's a substantial project, one of the largest ones we've done with the Capital Improvement Trust Fund. And he's done a couple of other projects using the Capital Improvement Trust Fund. And so we thought it was probably important to have Bill here in case you had any questions. So I'll introduce Bill Curry.
Everybody, good to be here and nice to see you all.
Hi, Bill.
Mr. Chairman.
Are we having a hard time hearing Bill, Commissioner Hill?
No.
Oh, please go ahead.
We got to meet Bill during the construction when we went out and toured the facility. Bill, I can't tell you what a wonderful job your team did. It looks great, the work that you did and the rooms that you redid. The whole paddock area looks great. The jockeys area looks great. Great job and congratulations on it coming to conclusion. But it was nice to meet you that day and give us a personal tour.
Well, thank you very much, Commissioner Hill. It was a very exciting project for us, as all the projects are at the casino. And I'm glad that you were all pleased with the results and the upgrade of the paddock. It looks very nice. But thank you very much.
All right.
Okay. So with that, I'll go ahead and go into the memo for the request. So each month, funds are deposited into a capital improvement trust for which licensees can use to repair, maintain, or improve the property where racing activities are conducted. Distributions are made upon the commission's approval of the licensee's request for consideration, followed by a request for reimbursement. Today, Plainridge is requesting reimbursement in the amount of $906,362.94. The funds will be used to reimburse Plainridge for the money spent to renovate the racing paddock. I have reviewed the request, all the supporting documents, which did include invoices from the contractor, bank statements showing the funds were made payable to the contractor in the amount requested, and a recommendation letter from Dixon Salo Architects, who were tasked with providing their opinion of the request to the commission. The preceding request for consideration was approved by the commission on February 29th, 2024. So with that, I do consider the request to be in good order and therefore recommend approval.
Thank you, Chad. Commissioners, any questions based on Chad's presentation or questions to Steve or Bill? All right.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Hill.
I move that the commission approve the Plainridge Park Casino Capital Improvement Trust Fund request for reimbursement in the amount of $906,362.94 for paddock renovations as included in the commissioner's packet and discussed here today.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Broder. Commissioner O'Brien.
Aye.
Commissioner Hill.
Aye.
Commissioner Skinner.
Aye.
Commissioner Broder.
Yes.
And I vote yes, 5-0. And retweet everything Brad said. We've all had an opportunity to go down there and look at the paddock. It looks great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, commissioners. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Retweet even a word anymore, given that they changed their name. All right, just trying to do some thoughts here in public. With that, do you have anything else, Dr. Lightbound?
No, just to add my voice that the paddock renovations were wonderful and much appreciated. And, numerous people, horsemen and our folks that work down there and all have made compliments on it as well. And that concludes the racing items for today.
Well, thank you, Dr. Lightbound. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
And thanks to everyone. Plain Ridge. All right. With that, we are going to go to our sports wagering division.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. We just have one item for you today, and that is a waiver request from the Sports Wagering Division for 4 operators related to 205 CMR 248.044. This is the regulation that requires that operators use identity authentication questions, also known as KBA, as part of their KYC process, or if they're going to use different methods, that those methods be approved by the commission. So you'll recall that last month you reviewed and approved FanDuel's alternate methods of KYC after we had found that those methods had been previously approved by the Sports Wagering Division in error when they actually should have come to the commission for approval. So we've since checked all operators to see if this same mistake that happened with FanDuel happened with any of the other operators, and we found that it had. The Sports Wagering Division approved alternate KYC methods for PSI, BetMGM, DraftKings, and Bally's. So we're seeking a temporary waiver to bring these 4 operators into regulatory compliance while we work on reviewing their processes and scheduling them for upcoming meetings for the commission to formally approve those processes. I will just note that all of the processes they're using that they're currently using are as strong, if not more strong than KBA. So we don't have any concerns about a temporary waiver. And one other thing I did in the memo, request a waiver until March 27th, but it would actually be helpful if we could make that maybe through April 30th to give us a little more time to get everything reviewed and scheduled for the commission.
Thank you, Carrie. Commissioners, any questions? All right.
I'm happy to move if we're ready for that. Yeah,
I think so.
I move that in accordance with 205 CMR 202.032, with the commission issue a waiver to Penn Sports Interactive, PSI, BetMGM, DraftKings, and Ballybet from the requirements outlined in 205 CMR 248.044 through April 30th, 2025, as granting the waiver meets the requirements specified in 205 CMR 102.034 and is consistent with the purposes of general laws, chapter 23N.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Skinner. Commissioner O'Brien.
Aye.
Commissioner Hill.
Aye.
Commissioner Skinner.
Aye.
Commissioner Broder.
Yes.
And I vote yes, 5-0.
Thank you.
Made it easy on you today.
Excellent.
All right. Thank you so much. Commissioners, do we want to keep moving or do we want a quick 5-minute break? We've been a little over an hour now. Keep moving. All right. With that, we are going to turn it over to the legal division. Good morning again, Councilor Grossman. And then I see Justin's off, so we'll start with Justin.
You're back to me, Mr. Chair. Good morning again, Chair and Commissioners. This is a discussion regarding 205 CMR 238.12. This is the letter of credit regulation that we've discussed, I believe, twice now. As you may recall, we last had this before the commission January 9th, where we had received some informal operator feedback. We had a lengthy discussion there about the various options on the table. And then there was instructions from the commission to go back and get a sort of informal commentary from operators with respect to the economic impact of letter of credit, going out and securing a letter of credit to cover the liabilities or the account balances. And that was kind of the fork in the road that I was asked to look into. I reached out to our operators through sports wagering, and I got feedback, which is included in the memo as part of the packet. I'll say the vast majority of the operators indicated that the letter of credit coverage would cost more to cover the account balances than the liabilities. Some of them did note that the liabilities do fluctuate significantly, as you can imagine. For example, pre-Super Bowl liabilities are quite high. during March Madness, they're quite high. They might be lower at other times of the year with less sporting activity occurring. I didn't get exact facts and figures from every operator. It's sort of a general sense that the balances are higher. One of the things that many of the operators raised, and this was raised as part of the commentary in the initial round as well, was that the letter of credit, although being the best protection in the event of a bankruptcy, is a static financial instrument. It takes negotiation, and once it's put in place, it's hard to change quickly just because of the nature of the instrument. So to reflect that, one of the tweaks I made to the regulatory language after I spoke with our CFAO, Derek Lennon, was to require that letter of credit only be refreshed essentially once per year, as opposed to what it had previously indicated, that it would be refreshed quarterly. So just because there are sort of procedural and administrative difficulties with establishing the letter of credit, and after discussion with Derek, the setting that at 110% of the preceding year's account balances, it seemed to make sense. So that would sort of remove one of the obstacles I think that was raised by the operators. The other piece that we added after the discussion from January was a definition of sports wagering liability. So that's in 238.01. So that's there in either instance. So the choice now before the commission is to maintain the existing regulation, which, as you recall, covers just the liabilities of the letter of credit, and just add the sports wagering liability definition, or to sort of flip it and say the letter of credit must cover the sports wagering account balances, and we'll still add that sports wagering liability definition in that instance. So there's sort of two choices before you at the present. If there's any questions about this, I'm available. I'm happy to answer any questions. I believe Derek's on the call as well. If there's anything specific to the financial instrument piece of this that he can assist with as well.
Thank you, Justin. I'll point out for the commissioners that the first time we started having this conversation, I was down in Plainville, and it was right before, it was during Breast Cancer Month. I remember because I was wearing pink, and Commissioner Broder hadn't even joined us yet. So I would like to say I appreciate legal and Derek sticking with us as we've been more inquisitive over the last few months about this. So thank you. Questions for Justin or statements on where we are? Commissioner Skinner.
So, Mr. Chairman, you said earlier that the coin toss discussion made you say, oh boy, is this discussion that makes me do the same thing. So I appreciate the responsiveness in the operators. I have to admit, though, I was looking for more solid numbers from the operators in terms of the difference in cost. We got pretty much a lot of, it's going to cost more to secure the accounts than it would to secure the liabilities. And I mean, that's not enough information for me. Could we clarify first where we stand, where the operators stand on compliance here with this letter of credit? Did the commission issue waivers? Yes.
Yes.
Yep. Okay.
There are waivers in effect until June 1st right now.
Okay. So I'm certainly not interested in removing any requirements that are in place now, which is that operators must secure by irrevocable letter of credit the liabilities. Because I don't have enough information, and I hear that the operators are saying that it would cost more to flip it so that the letter of credit covers account balances as opposed to liabilities, I'm still going to advocate for that instead of what is currently required in terms of the liabilities, that we instead require the letter of credit be secured for the accounts. Again, under the premise that's noted here in the memo, but it's under the premise that any money that a patron puts towards a wager, I mean, arguably there was an intent or and understanding that those funds would be at risk anyway, in a way that is not, to me, applicable to money that they have sitting in their accounts. So that's where I stand. I haven't changed my opinion on how this regulation should read since last time we talked about it.
Thank you, Commissioner Skinner. Commissioner O'Brien?
So I believe I'm exactly where Commissioner Skinner is, and just in terms of the enumerated options, Justin, am I correct that that's option 2 we're talking about?
Yes, I believe that option 2, Commissioner, and also just as a reminder to the whole commission, because we've talked about this many times, just posture wise, this is just to start the promulgation process. So we would then put it out for public comment. We would get official public comment. It seems like we've already done that because we've asked for a lot of comment informally, but this would put it out officially for public comment, start the process. We would get all that back and it would come back before the commission. So any additional input they wanted to share with us, we would take. But yeah, yes, Commissioner O'Brien, it's option 2.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm consistent with Commissioner Skinner on option 2.
Thank you, Commissioner O'Brien. Commissioner Hill, Commissioner Broder, what are we thinking?
I'm thinking option 1.
Okay. Commissioner Broder?
Sorry about that. A little bit of struggle finding the unmute. I understand the theoretical concern, but I'm still not convinced yet that this is a problem we need to solve. So I'm still in listening mode. And even if I were to vote to move forward in the process, I wouldn't want anyone to take that as a commitment that I would be voting to approve something at the end of the process, because I'm not sure, based on the information we have so far, that we need to take this step.
So to clarify, what you're saying is, would you be, are you essentially saying you wouldn't do either one or 2?
I do think we need the definition in any case, so I'm certainly supportive of that.
Yeah, I think a lot about what our charge is and what we're trying to do. Councilor Grossman and I often talk about the forest and the trees, and I always appreciate his counsel on that. We are talking about, when we back up here, such a remote possibility, right? That to even what we're getting at, one of these companies, which are publicly traded companies, would have to go into bankruptcy. And then once one of those companies, and by the way, theoretically, there would be red flags all along the line for both the IEB and sports wagering and the commissioners that something was afoot. Then we have to say, well, if this happens and it goes into a bankruptcy court, a bankruptcy judge would take this pot of money that Massachusetts is setting aside and allocate it the way the Massachusetts Gaming Commission would want them to allocate it. Now, I don't have to tell anyone here, there's been a 250-year tug on states' rights versus federal rights. And so, I don't want to wade into that, but I can't guarantee that pot of money would even be used the way I want it to. Likely it would be, but not guaranteed. And so for those reasons, I would say I'm somewhere between option 1, which the operators seem to kind of in unison be okay with. But then also, because remember, we are adding a cost to doing business by doing this. Let's be clear. The Massachusetts Gaming Commission is adding a cost to doing business for this very remote possibility if we vote to do option 1 or 2. So I'm somewhere between where Paul is and where Commissioner Hill is. I would not join on option 2. And that's kind of where I am right now. I hate to kick this again, though, so I would like to maybe come up with something here.
So, yeah, if I could chime in, you might be able to push me toward 1 a little bit if there was something that required notice out to patrons reminding them that this money was at risk, and whether that is when they log on, pop-up of some kind that reminded them this was not insured, whatever the language is that we want to talk about. I don't want to kick it either, but if we're not going to do that, I would like more affirmative education of the consumer to understand that this is not a bank, right? And this is not necessarily a gift card. I don't know, something that you might lose this money. So I don't know, legal in terms of language or process or what, but I would throw that out there as a compromise.
Yeah, that might be something, Commissioner O'Brien, where if we're looking at a regulatory change, that may go into sort of like the deposit mechanism, some sort of pop-up or something like that. So certainly we could look at that, and I'd be happy to work with Carrie on what exists when you go and make a deposit, and whether we can strengthen language there. Because frankly, I'm not clear on what the existing, if any, language appears.
And Carrie, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think any language appears when they load.
Apologies, I was multitasking, so I'll have to check in with Justin.
To Commissioner O'Brien's point, while she's thinking about it, again, back to this burden on the operators, to me, it's a very, very small burden to say you've got to put words into your app. So I agree, Commissioner O'Brien, that at the very least, there should be some education on, what happens to this money if something does go afoot. Commissioner Skinner?
No, I think that's a good idea. I will say too, option 2 is for me, the perfect world as far as this discussion goes. But option 1 is what we have in place now. I'm not hearing that, although Chair Maynard and Commissioner Broder, it seems that you're thinking this way. I'm not hearing that there's an option to completely get rid of the obligation or letter of credit to secure the liabilities. So option 1, I think, is the floor for me. Again, we have already, to put it your way, Chair Maynard, imposed a cost of doing business to the operators, because that's what's in existence in terms of our regulations right now. We just have a waiver. We just have a waiver through June 1st.
Yeah, they've not had to actually pay it yet. It sounds like we may be getting somewhere with option 1.
So can I ask clarifying though, would we need to add in specifically the definition? So 1 isn't exactly status quo, right? It would add that definition.
Correct. In the motion that I drafted for today, Commissioner O'Brien would account for the addition of the definition in 238.01. So we would define sports wagering liability. So option 1 is keeping just coverage of liabilities, but adding the definition of liability to the definition section 238.01. Option 2 is the definition plus it would swap it and cover account balances. So that's the distinction. To your point about the account information or warnings, I think that would be probably best suited in a separate reg. So that's something we could look at certainly for the future. But those are the distinctions between 1 and 2.
Right. So I guess what I would ask from legal and sports wagering is next agenda setting. If you guys know the regs you might propose that we do that in, if you could put that out there for under review, and or we put it out in a meeting in the near future.
Yeah, I'm happy to take that on.
Anything to add, commissioners, or do we want to do a motion?
I haven't said this in a while, Mr. Chairman, but I don't think we're ready for prime time on this one. Let's get some language back and see what legal comes up with some of what we've heard today. I think we're almost there, but I'm not sure we're quite there.
The only thing I would note, Commissioner Hill, just with respect to that, is that I think what Commissioner O'Brien was asking for would be a separate regulation for language about deposits. So it may not impact it seems, and I don't want to speak for anyone here, but it seems like there's maybe a gathering consensus for option 1 here, and in which case perhaps that could move forward, and then in a parallel path, I could work on the suggestion by Commissioner O'Brien with respect to a warning or language about account deposits not being secured like a bank or financial instrument. But that's just, I mean, I defer to you. I just wanted to raise that point.
Can I add, Justin, that, the waiver goes till June, but this starts the promulgation process, which is what, 90 days, Justin, or so forth. So, you know, we are running, believe it or not, it's February. We're running up against that. We have been talking about this since before Halloween. I guess I would say, Commissioner Hill, I respectfully disagree. I think if we can at least get started with something, we start there and then address Commissioner O'Brien's secondary concern, which it seems like there's going to be consensus around that too, around some sort of education process. So that's where I would be. But
Yeah, I mean, so Commissioner Hill, to your point, in an ideal world, we'd be doing this at the same time for me. But my vote on one would really be under the understanding that we're going to move expeditiously to amend the necessary regs to mandate notice to the customer.
Commissioner Broder, Commissioner Skinner, Commissioner Hill, anything to add to that? Do we have a motion?
Fine, I'll do it.
I thought Commissioner Broder was going to come in. I was looking at the boxes and I was like, he's going to start it.
Not so enthusiastic though, Commissioner Skinner.
What's that?
Don't be so enthusiastic.
It looks like Commissioner Hill might be willing to do the moving.
There you go.
I had been hogging all of these today, so I was trying to be polite. So go ahead, Commissioner Skinner.
I insist, Commissioner Hill. I was hesitant because we're not going to be advancing option 2. And so,
Right.
but I'm not opposed to option 1, so I would do it, but by all means.
Yeah,
We're
I'm right
advancing your
with you.
option, Commissioner Hill, so everyone was deferring to you, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So Justin, just to be clear, it would be the second motion that I would be making.
That's correct, Commissioner Hill. Though this is keeping 238.12 the same. It would only be adopting the regulation that adds a definition of liability, sports wagering liability.
So with that said, Mr. Chairman, I move that the commission approve the relevant portion of the small business impact statement in the draft of 205 CMR 238.01 as included in the commissioner's packet and discussed here today, and further that staff be authorized to take the steps necessary to file the required documentation with the Secretary of the Commonwealth to begin the regulation promulgation process.
Second.
You, Commissioner O'Brien,
Aye.
Commissioner Hill,
Aye.
Commissioner Skinner,
Aye.
Commissioner Broder,
Yes.
and I vote yes, 5-0. All right. Thank you all for that. And I appreciate, just as a personal side, all the commissioners' questions on this. It's been really helpful and educating to me. I don't necessarily have that background, so I've had to learn a lot quickly.
Mr. Chair, I hate to do this to Autumn, but can I just have 5 minutes before we start?
Absolutely, Commissioner O'Brien.
Thank you.
Let's meet again right after 11. All right. So Commissioner O'Brien, I did run into Autumn in the hallway and I said, we've iced the kicker.
I know, it's like you took your video off and I was like, oh, I should have asked right beforehand. My apologies.
No, I needed the break too. I actually needed it when I asked the first time and I just didn't push it. All right. With that, this is a reconvening of the Massachusetts Gaming Commission. We're holding this meeting virtually, so we will do a roll call. Good morning still, Commissioner O'Brien.
Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioner Hill.
Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioner Skinner.
Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioner Broder.
Good morning.
We're all still here. All right. So we left off with item number 8, subsection B. And for that, I believe we are going to kick it to Autumn. Counselor, how are you?
Good, thanks. Good morning, everyone. When the commission staff issue decisions, whether they're regarding licensing or non-compliance penalties, the individuals who are receiving the adverse decisions have a right to request a hearing before a hearing officer. These administrative appeals are governed by the commission's regulations in 205 CMR 101. Today's presentation is just to provide the commission of a snapshot of the administrative appeals program for the year of 2024. In 2024, we had a record number of appeals. It's the highest number of appeals we've ever received at the commission. It was 25 for the total year, which there's 2 notable things about this. Is one, that we didn't receive a single appeal in November or December. All those 25 appeals came in then in the first 10 months. The appeals process typically takes about 10 to 12 weeks between the initial filings and the hearing officer's decision. We just wrapped up all of the final ones that came in October. So the other interesting number that came up last year was the number of horse racing appeals. We had more horse racing appeals than the previous 5 years combined, which it's not an unheard of amount. We've had 7 horse racing appeals previously, but that was also in years where Suffolk was racing as well as Plainridge Park. Suffolk Downs was racing as well as Plainridge Park. And obviously the 5 previous years were affected by COVID. As you could tell, the numbers for 2020 through 2022 are significantly lower. The cases that came in were varied. The cases on the left where the appeals were of the IEB decisions, whether it was licensing matters or exclusion lists or non-compliance penalties. When an appeal of an IEB decision is made, the Chief Enforcement Counsel's office assigns an attorney to represent the IEB. For horse racing and responsible gaming appeals, the legal division assigns one of the associate general counsels to represent the commission for those matters. Last year, we had a breakdown of about just over 50% of the appeals were from IEB decisions, with the majority of them being regarding licensing and registration requirements, where it was 2 gaming employee licenses, 5 service employee registrations, and a vendor registration. The majority of horse racing appeals last year, which we had a lot of, as I mentioned, were related to pharmaceuticals, where after every race, 2 of the horses are tested for pharmaceuticals in their systems, and if anything that is prohibited is detected, there will be a fine, and the trainer or owner of the horse can request a horse racing judge's hearing, and then depending upon the outcome of that hearing, they could appeal that to the hearing officers. And lastly, we also had 5 VSE forfeiture appeals, where if there is someone who is on the voluntary self-exclusion list and they are caught in the casino, any winnings and funds that have been converted into casino funds, either Tito tickets, chips, or rewards accounts will be forfeit. That's in accordance with 205 CMR 133.06, I believe. And another clarification, the exclusion list on the left-hand side where we had 4 things, that is the involuntary exclusion list under 205 CMR 152, not to be mistaken with the voluntary exclusion list. For legal representation, the majority of our appeals came in from appellants who were pro se, which for those of us who aren't attorneys, that means they were representing themselves. And we did have a couple instances where there was some form of limited assistance representation where an attorney assisted in drafting the request for hearing, but did not represent the appellant throughout the process. The preferred languages are specifically based upon whether an interpreter was requested. There were a couple instances where appellants did indicate that English wasn't their first language, but they were comfortable enough with speaking English that they did not need an interpreter for the hearing. And those languages were Spanish and Portuguese. But for the interpreters that we hired, they were for Mandarin. There were a number of untimely appeal requests there. In our regulations, the CMR 205 CMR 101.02 subsection 2, depending on the type of matter being appealed, there are different deadlines. For horse racing appeals, they have to file their appeal within 10 days. For the voluntary self-exclusion forfeitures, they have to file within 15 days of the forfeiture. To appeal non-compliance penalties, they have to file within 21 days of notice. And all the other licensing decisions and involuntary exclusion list matters need to be filed within 30 days of the notice. The next page is partial filings. So under the regulations, 205 CMR 101.02 to the 201.023. We require a request for hearing form and statement explaining the basis for the request. That's just explain their side of events and what's going on and why they would like to appeal the decision. And we also require the letter, order, and ruling that's being appealed. Typically, when people reach out, if they don't submit a completed request and they don't submit these 3 documents, I try to work with them. I let them know what the forms required are. And for the most part, I would say probably 80% of the time, they're able to complete the forms, get them in, and schedule the hearing process. In 4 cases, I requested they submit the forms and just never heard back. So I closed those cases administratively. Trespasses. Yep.
Sorry to interrupt you. Communication to those individuals where you're seeking some additional information as a result of a partial filing. Do you reach out to them by email or mail or?
It's done by email because I believe we've only received out of the 25, I believe 1 of the cases came by mail, but all other correspondence with the clerk's office is done by email.
Is that just a practice or what is that?
That's just general practice, is that the commission's website on the section where it explains how to file an appeal and has the forms, it leaves the clerk's email address and the commission's address, but most people just reach out by email.
And so you are responding naturally, I suppose, to the email through which you've received the communication.
Yes, correct.
And then in the situation where it might bounce back or be returned as undeliverable, what happens then? And you might not have experienced that.
I haven't experienced that. I've been clerking since March and I haven't experienced that. It's typically I'll try to reach out again if for some reason I either haven't received a response or and I'll just give a reminder of what needs to be filed at that point. but sometimes it's just, I don't get a bounce back email, but I don't receive a response.
Yeah, yeah. But it's intuitively, right, we're using our judgment, right? If it does come back as undeliverable, you're seeking an alternate method to communicate, correct?
Yes, yeah. And like I said, that hasn't become an issue. The one appeal we received by physical mail, well, we've had a couple come in late by physical mail by a couple months. So, but the one received by physical mail had the proper email address and they were responsive on their email address.
Thank you.
Trespasses, sometimes people reach out to the clerk's office asking if they could have a trespass appealed. And unfortunately, trespasses are private business decisions by the licensees. The commission can't overturn a no trespassing order that was privately issued. So I refer them to the security teams with the individual establishments, and Encore even set up an email specifically for trespass appeals that they could reach out to. And so I just forward those along. And then lastly, if the entire administrative appeal process goes through and they receive a ruling from the hearing officer, if they disagree with that ruling, they could attempt to request that the commission review the hearing officer's decision. I'm sure you guys are all aware of the cases that are brought to you. Last year in 2024, there were 7 appeals to the commission. None of them were horse racing or VSE matters. They were all related to IEB cases. And I believe off the top of my head, it was the IEB appealed 3 of the decisions up and the appellants appealed the other 4.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
About if the 25 appeals in 2024, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that number of the 7 outside of that, or are they included in that?
So when the appeals go to the commission, the timelines are a little bit different because they have to occur after the decision. So we always get, if a decision comes out in December, the appeal of that decision might not be filed until January because of the holiday. So I believe of the 7, 2 of them were from late 2023 and the other 5 were 2024 decisions.
So there was the 25 number talks about essentially how many where they came from, that initial appeal.
Yeah, so the 25 refers to the initial appeal, and then this would be the next step up where they're requesting an appeal of the appeal.
Got it.
And like I said, some of them hold over until the following year. I believe we've had some 2024 decisions that were appealed in January of this year, and we also had some 2023 decisions that were appealed in the beginning of 2024.
Makes sense. Thanks for that.
Stop my share. If anyone has any other questions.
I don't have a question. I will say I appreciate this overview and it puts into perspective, you highlighted the 7, that's what we see, right? And so it puts into perspective what you're dealing with from that office and the clerks who deal with this. So we appreciate all your hard work on that. Commissioner O'Brien.
So yeah, reiterating that, and then Autumn, this is probably not something you can ask, maybe better directed to Dr. Livebaum, but do we know why the uptick in horse racing?
Yeah, I believe Dr. Lightbound may be able to answer that better. It was just the uptick in comparison to previous years where there were 3 years that were reduced due to COVID.
Well, that was COVID, yeah.
And it was also Suffolk Downs stopped racing in 2019. So there were going to be less appeals as there were less active horse races in the jurisdiction. If Dr. Lightbound has an answer, I see she just turned her camera on.
Yeah, there really wasn't any particular reason, but of those, only 2 of them ended up with a full-blown hearing with the hearing officer. The others were either dismissed or dropped by the person.
Right. Okay. Thanks.
Yep.
If there's no other questions, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Autumn.
All right. So our next item, we will turn it over to Director Monahan, and that is for the Investigations Enforcement Bureau. It looks like we have a couple of issues.
Yes, sir. Good morning. We have 3 non-compliance matters for the commission today. 1 is an update on a matter the commission had asked for more information about, and then 2 are new non-compliance matters for the commission to decide how to move forward. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Enforcement Counsel Zach Mercer for the first item.
Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. The first matter today is an alleged non-compliance incident involving temporary Category 3 sports wagering operator Penn Sports Interactive. It involves non-compliance with 205 CMR 133.06, 205 CMR 233.06, and 205 CMR 256.07. The facts of that matter involve that over a 2-day period from April 2nd to April 4th, 2024, PSI transmitted digital marketing via email and push notifications to 8 total patrons who self-excluded in Massachusetts, and 36 patrons who had excluded directly with Penn and have at some point had been active in Massachusetts. PSI reported that this was the result of a human error by way of PSI's marketing team checking or unchecking the appropriate boxes to filter communications that are sent to patrons. PSI self-reported this matter to the Sports Wagering Division on April 5th, 2024. As has been practiced in the past with these matters, the IAB is seeking the Commission's guidance on how it wishes to proceed. Those options, as a reminder, are to move the matter to an adjudicatory hearing, refer the matter back to the IAB pursuant to 205 CMR 232, or under 23N Section 16 to issue a civil administrative penalty. As always, I'm happy to answer any questions the commissioners may have on those facts.
Commissioners, Commissioner O'Brien.
So Attorney Mercer, did they give any further information in terms of training or separation of duties, double checking to make sure the error doesn't happen again?
Certainly. So they did implement a number of measures. I'm sorry, my notes just went away as I moved windows. They did provide information as to remediation. They've implemented additional back-end selections to the target groups to act as a fail-safe should the manual processes fail. They've implemented a 2-employee sign-off to confirm that the appropriate steps are taken to ensure the appropriate filters are reset. And they've added additional quality assurance checks.
And did we, as a commission, hear from any of the 36 who were erroneously contacted?
No. So essentially, my understanding is that PSI became aware of this due to a consumer complaint from another jurisdiction, which led to them going back to figuring out how this occurred.
Got it. Okay. Given that, I would move to have it sent back to IAB for a recommendation to us.
Second.
Well, I'm sorry, I wasn't formally moving. I was just saying what I would do. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut off conversation.
That'd be fine with me, Mr. Chairman.
I think we're looking for consensus anyway. So Paul, Commissioner Skinner.
I have a question about the 3 options. Sorry, adjudicatory hearing by this commission sent back to the IAB for further investigation and a recommendation, or you've completed, has IAB exhausted its investigation right at this point?
So generally, as far as these matters have gone, I've had conversations with PSI. I've reviewed the reports that they've submitted, gained a good amount of information. If the commission were to send it back to the IAB, obviously we would work up a recommendation as we have in the past, would probably have another conversation with PSI regarding any kind of gaps we want to fill in. And then obviously kind of discussing any kind of potential recommendation of a civil administrative penalty. So that's kind of where we would go if the commission refers it back to the IAB.
And the third option, you said civil administrative penalty. Is that after you've presented a recommendation to the commission and we can reject it or impose a different one?
So my understanding of that particular provision, which hasn't been used by the commission as of yet, would be that after a recitation of the facts today, if the commission sought to impose a civil administrative penalty, they would be able to do so. I'm not certain if anything would stop the commission from doing that after a presentation from the IAB. I believe if we were to present a recommended penalty to the commission, the option would be to adopt or to move to an adjudicatory hearing at that point. But I'm not 100% certain on any alternative means. I'd have to defer to leave it.
Okay, so I'm in favor. Thanks for all of that clarification. I'm in favor of sending this back to the IAB for a recommendation.
That gives you 5.
Thank you all. And I believe I have the next matter, so I will move right into that. This is a matter that'll be familiar to most of the commissioners. This has previously been before the commission originally on April 30th, 2024. Coincidentally, this involves the same regulation addressed by sports wagering earlier, 205 CMR 248044, that involving the necessary use of KBA questions in the KYC flow for sports wagering operators. For context, on that original April 30th date, Caesars Sportsbook had requested a variance from the regulatory requirements of that provision. During that discussion involving that request, the commission had concerns regarding Caesars' failure to include the KBA questions in its KYC flow since launch. Following that discussion, the commission requested that the IAB review the matter for potential noncompliance. The IAB conducted a preliminary review of the matter, which was presented to the commission in the July 11th, 2024 public meeting. During that meeting, the IAB presented a timeline of communications, which is summarized in the IAB's memo that's been submitted to the commission on pages 2 and 3. As noted further in that memo, the IAB had additional communications with representatives from Caesars and the commission's former sports wagering business manager, Crystal Boscheman, who was communicating with them at the time. As part of those communications, the IAB reviewed correspondence between the sports wagering division and Caesars to better understand the incident. Those communications have been provided to the commission as attachments to the IAB's memo. The IAB inquired of Caesars as to the reasons for its failure to implement the required KBA processes or seek a waiver. From Caesars' explanation, the IAB has discerned the failure was the result of several concurrent issues. First, Caesars partially relied upon its prior GLI certification, which indicated it was compliant with the earlier wording of 205 CMR 248.044. Second, Caesars interpreted the lack of a reply from the sports wagering division to its June 8th, 2023 email, stating that it did not use KBA questions as confirmation that its reported process was compliant. And third, Caesars' erroneous belief that it was compliant was further reinforced by its internal position that the process that it had in place, which was explained to the sports wagering division in its June 8th, 2023 email, was superior to the standard KBA processes that are required under 248.044. Caesars informed the IAB that it believed its process was compliant until Ms. Boscheman contacted them on January 29th, 2024. Compounding the misinterpretation by Caesars, the sports wagering division assumed that Caesars' KYC was compliant due to Caesars' lack of a waiver request. Both Caesars and the sports wagering division reported to the IAB that no representations were made by the sports wagering division that Caesars' alternative process was compliant prior to the discovery of the noncompliance in January 2024. And Caesars added in communications with the IAB that it had no intent to willfully disregard the regulation in these facts. Obviously, there's a lot of facts that have been there and a lot of facts in the memo that the IAB submitted to the commission. I'll be asking for guidance under the same headers as the last matter, but obviously I'm happy to answer any questions regarding the timeline or the report at this time prior to that.
Sounds like a who's on third kind of situation. Commissioners, what kind of direction do we want to give here? Understanding that they were using a superior method and there were some errant emails. Well, sounds like two different ways. Commissioner O'Brien?
Yeah, I mean, and given what we did earlier in the meeting, right? I mean, I think we've addressed, there were some deficiencies on our process on our end. I am still not happy with the GGL. I said I was fine in the beginning and I didn't look at your regs. I don't love that, but understanding there is some responsibility on our end. I would be doing the same process and suggesting we send it back to IAB for a recommendation.
Commissioner Broders, yes. Commissioner Hills, yes. Commissioner Skinner?
I agree that we should send this back to the IAB. I also want to co-sign what Commissioner O'Brien is saying in terms of, how this might have happened. I also, though, have to say, just in terms of the exhibits that were provided to us, it is clear that our sports wagering division did communicate the amendments to that regulation. There was a link pointing to the regulations or the packet where the change was discussed, included in the email, which just went unresponded to by Caesars. So I understand we're not looking to lay blame anywhere, but in terms of, both sides having some level of culpability here, I think it's easy to determine that based on the information that we have.
I think I'm in agreement with everyone here. I would send it back to the IAB and say, just have your glasses on that looks at it from the perspective that Commissioner O'Brien and Commissioner Skinner just laid out, which is, you know, a little bit of mercy.
Certainly understood. If that's as the commission has stated, we'll get it. We'll get to it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Was that all you have, Councilor Mercer?
It is. Yes, I'll hand it over to Nate or to Caitlin to hand over to Nate at this point. But thank you all.
We don't need two steps and go straight to the.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. This matter is before the Commission for guidance on the IEB's next steps in addressing an instance of non-compliance by Category 3 sports wagering operator American Wagering, Inc., doing business as Caesars Sportsbook. This instance of non-compliance involves Caesars offering wagers on tournament total red cards during the Union of European Football Association Euro 2024 tournament. Sports Wagering Division of the Mass Gaming Commission notified Caesars on July 15th that they had been accepting wagers, 6 wagers specifically, between June 27th, 2024 and July 9th, 2024, on those tournament total red cards for a total stake of $8,270 in contravention of Mass General Law, Chapter 23N, Section 3, and 205 CMR 247.012E. Specifically, the general law states that no sports wagering shall not include acceptance on any wager for any injuries, penalties, player discipline, or replay review. The core reason for Caesars offering these wagers was not identified by Caesars in their initial report to us, nor on a second glance by the Sports Wagering Division asking for further clarification why the wagers were offered. However, they did say that they had followed up training on their head of trading. They spoke to the trading team and offered further training and guidance on following Massachusetts restrictions on this. So with that, I can answer any additional questions. I can just add one more component that a similar violation by BetMGM had been set for an adjudicatory hearing. It was also on a total penalty cards during soccer matches. As you're aware from Councilor Mercer's indication, the 3 steps are: we can either send back to the IEB, set up for an adjudicatory hearing, or for the commission to issue their own civil administrative penalty.
Thank you, Councilor. I remember Commissioner O'Brien educated me on red cards last year. So. What do we want to do with this one?
So can I just ask a couple questions? And I'm sorry, you probably said this and I just missed it. Was this self-reported or found out some other way?
The Sports Wagering Division discovered this and reported it to Caesars. So we identified it.
And was that the same circumstance for the MGM one that went adjudicatory?
Yes, it was.
It was. Okay.
Yes.
And am I understanding you that despite the 2 calls, they can't succinctly tell you what caused the error?
I can tell you that the reporting, they said the new market was mistakenly added on June 10th.
But they don't say how.
They do not say how. And then there was a follow-up email. Could you give us more clarification? That there was no further clarification provided at this point.
Okay. Well, I would normally send something this amount back. I'm troubled by the fact that we found it. We're doing adjudicatory with MGM, and that despite asks for clarification, we haven't gotten it yet. So I'm going to break with my other thoughts on this one and do the same. I would think we do the same as we're treating the MGM with an adjudicatory.
I support that, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Hill, Commissioner Broder?
That would be fine.
Yeah, I mean, I'd normally be inclined to send it back. I think that is the good, quite frankly, default position for a lot of these. But given the fact that on what sounds like the exact same set of facts, we've already acted to bring an adjudicatory hearing against MGM. In this case, that's fine with me.
Thank you. Just as a point of clarification, there had been discussion previously with BetMGM whether the IEB would be acting as a party or not. With BetMGM, we had been assigned as acting as a party, so I will proceed in that same fashion.
I think you've got your consensus, Councilor Kennedy.
Thank you.
That's everything the IAB has today, so thank you.
All right, thank you, Director Monahan. Commissioner O'Brien, get ready to re-educate me again on those cards. Dust that off. I didn't play soccer ever a day in my life. Let me say that.
Well, so I have that one down, but now I got to learn lacrosse. So that's a whole other set of cards.
Yeah, there you go. I never played lacrosse either. All right. So with that, I believe that takes us to, do we have any commissioner updates? All right. Any other business that we want to discuss? A motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Commissioner O'Brien.
Aye.
Commissioner Hill.
Aye.
Commissioner Skinner.
Aye.
Commissioner Broder.
Yes.
And I vote yes, 5-0. Everyone be safe today in this.
Hear, hear.
Stay warm, and we'll see you next time we have a meeting.
Very good.